Pat McAfee show with Aaron Rodgers and me. We are talking about NFL referees and these ridiculous roughing the passer penalties that plague the NFL this week. We saw roughing the passer penalties against Patrick Mahomes, against Tom Brady. They're terrible. They're ruining the sport, and we're going to talk about them and what can be done. So before we get into the boys here, and AJ Hawk, should have mentioned him, but this is a problem in all sports. And here, I'm going to make it really succinct. A referee or an official is the only person in the entire stadium or arena or whatever that can go about doing whatever they want to do without any repercussions at all. They are not held accountable for anything. Think about that. In the stands, you have to act a certain way, right? You can't just get drunk and throw up all over yourself or start fights or curse or say vulgar things. You'll be removed. Players, they have to do what is in the rules, and they're held to a certain standard on the field, right? If they commit a penalty, a flag will be thrown. If they punch a player, they'll be thrown out. Unless they're Draymond Green, then they'll just be fined. If they push a cameraman down, they'll be suspended and charged with a misdemeanor crime. Everyone in the stadium, coaches, they'll be thrown out. The only people who are not held accountable are referees or officials, whatever sport you're watching. A referee can make a bad call, and they can say it was a bad call in the report the next day, and nothing will happen. Most people don't even know these referees' names. The problem is that, one, the referees are not held accountable at all. Two, they're part-time employees. Referees should be, this is how I think we should, the first step, hold the referees accountable. If a referee is a shitty ref, they should be fired. The referees should give a press game or a post-game press conference after every game and answer why they did what they did on the field. If they can't answer it, it should be the same as a quarterback or a head coach. If the guy who made the call, Bogert or whoever, if he made the call against with the Tom Brady roughing the passer against the Falcons, if he's at a press conference immediately after and they say, "Why did you do that?" and he says, "I don't know, I screwed it up." If he says that enough, he should be fired and he should be done. And it's a dog-eat-dog world. And this is the biggest business basically in the world. The NFL bought a day of the week from God, for God's sake. They own Sundays, right? They stole a day of the week from church. So if they can do that, they can hire full-time employees. Well, I mean, let's say let's just make a number up. Let's say there's 10 games on a Sunday or whatever, 10 possible different games. You have 5 different referee or 5-man or /woman crews, then you're going to have 50 full-time referees. This is the NFL. They could have 100 full-time referees and just rotate and have off weeks and send people to different places, and then they should all be graded. You should know their names, and they should be held accountable. That is the first thing that we should be doing. Boys, what do y'all say? Aaron, don't look at me like that.
This roughing the passer call stuff that's happening. Tom Brady, obviously, with Grady Jarrett this weekend, called by Jerome Boger, who called one against the Bills or against the Ravens, against the Bills last week. Then last night, there's a situation where Chris Jones strips the ball clearly, takes it from Derek Carr, tries to brace himself going down. Doesn't matter, the refs say. When you're in a throwing posture, that's going to take place. You can't review roughing the passer. It's really end-all, be-all, and it's affecting games. You're a quarterback. You've taken massive shots. I assume some of the
one of the rules is created for Rodgers. The rule where the defensive, and that's another part of this, where all these rules, even like the concussion rule that we currently have, or whatever the protocol is now, it's all so reactionary, where the NFL says they saw Tom Brady get hurt when the defender dove at his leg. So then they created a rule where now defenders can't go low on a quarterback. They see Rodgers get hurt with a defender falling on Rodgers, and now a defender can't put their body weight on a quarterback. They see Tua get hurt. So now all of a sudden there's like a 3-step NFL or concussion protocol, which is ridiculous. Like, it's so reactionary. There's no reasoning, and that's Goodell to the finest, where he just does this stupid stuff, just like boom, 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 very reactionary. And then in 6 months or a year, whenever his reactionary knee-jerk reaction is a complete disaster, there's no explanation or logic to why the ruling exists. So then nothing gets done, and it's just screwed up. I don't think roughing the passer should be reviewable, just like pass interference. We've already proven that doesn't work. What needs to get better are these referees who are reffing the game. What needs to get better is the competition committee who are putting forth these rules. The rules are ridiculous.
rules that have been put in place are to save guys like you, to
Yes.
make you play longer. What are your thoughts on that? Tom Brady said, I don't throw the flags. And I think Tom Brady has gone out and said that the game's much easier now. It's he didn't like the calls. I think you've said the same thing. But what do you think about how we fix it? How do we fix
I, I hate to keep pausing and stealing all the shine, but I devil's advocate is that I do think you have to protect the players, and I do think as players get bigger, faster, stronger, the risk for injury is higher. So I do think that it's not the same game as when Troy Aikman was the quarterback. You didn't have linebackers who were 6'4", 270 running a 4.3. It wasn't the same kind of athlete. So I do think players should be protected. I don't think quarterbacks or anybody should be taking just blindside hits to the helmet. I do think concussion should be taken seriously, but it's going way too far where what is a normal sack is now a penalty. And I don't know how defenders can play the game. I don't know how defensive players can truly even understand how to play the game. And I think that's part of the problem, is that there should be rules, but a defender and an offensive player and a referee should all agree on what those rules are. If those three entities all have differing understandings of said rule, then it's probably a shitty rule.
it? Is it fixable? And where do you stand on the whole roughing the passer maybe being a reviewable penalty situation?
Yeah, look, they tried to do that with pass interference a couple of years ago. It's tough because
Didn't work.
There's a big subjective nature to that call. And I don't know how much you can see objectivity in a slow motion replay.
The slowing down, that's I think what hurts a lot of pass interference and roughing the passer reviews, is that when you review it in slow motion, it's a totally separate call than in fast motion. And I think the rules, like most rules, are created in the flow of the game. They're there for what's happening in the flow of the game. They're not there for what's happening in a microscopic slowed down thing. Like in basketball, we know where the out of bounds line is, right? If you slow down the camera enough and got so microscopic that you could see paint chips from a shoe slightly on the paint chips of the line, that, to me, that's taking it too far. And I don't think everything should be slowed down, zoomed in, and reviewed to that extent. So I'm with Aaron here, where I don't think that's the answer, even though it seems like the right answer. And we have a case study of defensive pass interference where it didn't work at all. Ask the Saints.
Play, look, as a quarterback, there's times where we feel like football players and times where we don't. And what I mean by that is football is a collision sport. It's a contact sport. And so when we're involved in those collisions, there's part of us, maybe it's the kid in us who grew up, not necessarily playing quarterback, playing defense, playing running back, playing linebacker, tackling, doing more of the stuff that everybody else in the field is doing every single time, not just, dropping back and throwing the ball and not getting hit every single play. There's something about that I think we do enjoy. We enjoy the contact. It is tough to play defense. The strike zones for tacklers has totally changed. You can't hit guys over the middle like you used to. And then policing the quarterback position is the number one thing. And there's been multiple hits that have changed the course, the direction of roughing the passer.
You can tell that the NFL made a concerted effort. They understand, all right, guys, look, offense puts people in the seats. People want to see points. They want to see, offensive plays. The quarterback is the money position. Let's protect these guys. I don't have a problem with that. But just make it consistent. Make it consistent and make it to where it's not ruining the game.
Which makes it really tough. We've been on the wrong side of a few of those calls over the years that kind of look similar to the play last night. I don't know, and again, I'm making a generalization here and just speaking for myself, though, but I personally am not begging for those calls, for that call last night. I don't know what else Chris Jones can do on that play. And that was not.
You are. They are. All these quarterbacks are begging for the calls. How many times do you see Aaron Rodgers in a referee's ear? How many times do you see Tom Brady in a referee's ear? How many times do you see any of these great quarterbacks in a referee's ear? They're nonstop in their ear because they're nonstop begging for calls. And referees understand who they are. Referees understand, hey, look, if Tom Brady gets hit a certain way, we're calling it that way. If Teddy Bridgewater gets hit that way, who cares? If Aaron Rodgers gets hit a certain way, we're calling it. If Bailey Zappi gets hit a certain way, who cares? They know who the golden geese are. They know who the primetime players are. So even though Aaron says, hey, man, I'm not really begging for these calls, you most certainly are begging for the calls.
No, that would not be a call I'd be begging to hit.
Yes, it
would. The things that I think are most important is the shots to the head.
Agreed.
That's 100%. The most important thing.
Every player on the field should have their head protected. I don't think there should be any hits to the helmet. Now, the only time where it's like, what are you going to do, is if a receiver catches it and the defensive player is going in for the tackle, and at the last second the receiver clutches, and that leads to the head-to-head. I don't think there should be a penalty. I think, if anything, review targeting, review those kind of calls, helmet to helmet. Make sure you get that right, because if a running back or receiver is the one initiating the contact, there is no penalty for, the receiver ducked his head and initiated helmet to helmet. Where there is no protection for the defensive player currently, because it's been so skewed to protect the defenseless offensive player.
Shots to the head and the unnecessary roughness ones, where a guy doesn't have to pick you up and throw you down, or the 2 or 3 step shots.
It's like intent almost. It's like intentional. You're saying.
Yeah, I think it's tough with the lower leg ones too, because a lot of times those guys are already on the ground or going.
I think that's a bad one. I think the 2 is the intentional, like they're saying, helmet to helmet. Leading, targeting. The targeting rule is fine. The other one I think should be illegal is the defensive players on the ground are going low, because it's so dangerous to have a quarterback stepping up or standing there and having defensive players dive down into their legs, which, they would do. So I have no problem. If you're on the ground, if you're a defensive player on the ground, sorry, pal, but you can't lunge to Aaron Rodgers' knees. If you're falling to the ground, you can't lunge to their knees. You want to roll these people over. But I think if you protect those 2 sides of it, again, with intent, if you protect that, if someone accidentally, grazes a helmet, but if they're intentionally doing that or intentionally picking up a quarterback or any player and pile driving them down to the ground, they're turning into Diesel from 1996 and jackknife powerbombing people. We don't need that. But what used to be a normal play shouldn't be penalized.
Going to the ground. So I think the intent of the rule is protection of quarterback, and it's a quarterback-driven league.
Yes,
right? We have to understand
for sure. That. I just said that.
But the enforcement,
it's all over the place.
Very difficult for all referees.
It's all over the place. I know
both those referees. We've had them.
Bogert's a scrub.
Jerome,
he should be fired.
And Carl, they're both great refs. And I think they both felt like they made the right call.
That's a problem.
Heat of the moment. It's bang bang.
That's a problem. The problem is if a good referee or a tenured referee makes a shitty call, but then believes that it's the right call, that shows that something's broken. That shows that something is messed up. Because if what's considered a good ref or a long tenured ref, or however you want to phrase it, if they are making a call that they feel is correct even after it's shown to not be correct, then that's a huge issue, because either the referee is wrong and they're the ones enforcing the rule, or the rule is impossible to enforce.
Bang, it's quick. Those are difficult calls for sure. But it's more difficult in defense, because I don't know if I'm coaching defensive line and I'm sitting in with Chris Jones in a meeting on Wednesday, what am I telling him?
What are you supposed to do different? What is it? And
Yeah,
I think
nothing.
that doesn't really get talked about whenever you're asking Carl why he made the call, but him doubling down on it, being like, well, in a throwing posture, they have protection. And I get the NFL is run by the quarterbacks, but man, there's some big time. They go down to score. it is. Oh, yeah. It's big games are big.
And here's another part of it too. And I know we like to talk about things from a betting angle, because it is. We all have our vices, but as more money, legit regulated money, is getting poured into the sport, and I know people are going to be like, we don't all bet on the game. Look, there is a sports book being put into stadiums as we speak. There are deals with DraftKings being done The Cincinnati Reds, I know it's baseball, but they're getting a sports book in their league or in their arena, stadium, field, however you want to say it. As more regulated billion-dollar deals and all this stuff goes into these sports, this kind of thing can't happen, right? This kind of thing can't be willy-nilly, where gamblers and companies and whatever can't be putting all this money into something that is just like this weird subjective gray area. So the NFL and sports in general, really, sports are going to have to get a serious grip on this. There's way too many eyes. There's way too much scrutiny. There's way too much on the line for these refs or even the NFL to have these terrible ass rules. So I think with gambling being so much more popular now, fantasy football being as popular as ever, all that, these huge deals, and it's only going to get bigger. More that happens, if a call like what happened to Atlanta happens in the Super Bowl, and you're talking about $3, $4, $5 billion being swung because of that, you're going to see riots in the street.
Being decided by this whole thing, and I'm happy to hear your take on it, but you have to compliment every ref because guess what? Probably have them this upcoming weekend. So just keep doing that, Aaron. We'll keep doing the bad stuff.
Listen, it's a tough job. I mean, I'm not bullshitting. It's a tough job.
I agreed, yeah.
Everything happens in fractions of seconds, and you have to make decisions which could impact games on what you're seeing. And I don't think it's to go down the road of reviewing it.
And let me say that too. Like, I'm not expecting for 100% perfect, right? I'm not saying that every ref should make every right call and no ref should ever make a wrong call. My problem is that you've got referees who believe that the call was right. You've got players who believe the call is wrong. You've got analysts who believe the call is wrong. Like, who's right? I need to know. I need to know something. If the referee says, "Look, I screwed the pooch. That's on me. My bad." Then we can move to, all right, should he be reffing anymore? Should he be fired? Should he be taken off games? Should something happen here? What part of the rule did he mess up? But if we're caught in a Spider-Man meme where he's pointing over here and the defensive player's pointing here and the analyst is pointing here and the ref's pointing here and Goodell's pointing up here, if we're in a situation like that, then that's the problem. That's what I'm fighting against, is that gray area right there.
I think we might end up in the same spot we did with pass interference, where there's gray areas, and then one call changes the entire trajectory of all other calls that fit under that, that standard. And I don't think when we did pass interference, I don't think what was accomplished was what we had hoped.
Nothing got
because,
accomplished.
like I said, one call,
it was shit.
Refereed and interpreted a certain way, changed.
It was total shit.
The review process on every other play, and I just think that that's what's going to happen when you have a subjective call.
You do not want every penalty reviewed. I can promise you that.
There's intent involved, and when intent is involved, it on a foundational level takes it out of a purely objective rule. And I think there's so much gray area that it may do more harm than good.
Yeah,
Agreed.
None of us know the right
Agreed.
answer, I guess, at this point. I'm happy to hear your take on it. But, Aaron, if you get picked up and dropped on your head, we're going to be mad about it.
Yeah. Goddamn right.
Throw the flag. Throw the flag.
If you do a flop, though, we'll also probably, be mad. Well, you know what I mean? There's a little bit of a gray area. But these refs, I don't think can tell the difference. If you're flopping around back there, you might be able to pick up a quick 15. Something to think about. Listen, I'm not telling you to cheat, but just something to think about. You might feel like a weak person, a little bit soft in real time, and in the locker room, you might get buried on this show, probably get buried on the internet, probably get buried. That's a first down, baby.
Yeah, first down.
Are we moving the chains or are we not?
That's what matters. First downs.
I don't think it's worth it.
It is worth it. He would do it, and he's done it 100 times. But that's what I mean. It's tough, man. It's tough because you get, like, especially now, right? Where a bad call, you get so many angles, and you get real time, like all these people comparing plays and comparing things, and you see things from all these angles and zoomed in and slowed down or whatever. And it's easy to be like, oh yeah, this call is absolutely botched. But that's what I'm saying. Where I think the referee, if the referee botches a call and sees that it's botched and says that it's botched, okay, it's the same thing as a quarterback throwing an interception. A quarterback sees the interception, he throws the interception, he sees the tape, he's going to come out there in the presser and say, like, yeah, screwed up. I saw this. I thought we were in this. I thought this play was happening here. I thought the defender was doing this, and I messed up, whatever. And then you go forward. And if he keeps doing it, guess what? You can his ass. You trade him, you cut him, you get a new quarterback. But the quarterback's never going to say, man, I think that was good. We're at an impasse here, pal. I saw the replay. I saw the angles. I saw the slow-mo. And I think everything was fine. I would do it again if I had to. And be like, well, what are you talking about? You threw an interception. Like, you screwed up. You can't be at an impasse there. And right now we're at an impasse where the enforcers of the rules don't know the rules well enough, or the rules aren't set out well enough to where they can be enforced in a way that the players can play the game understanding the rules. And that's the problem that we're at right now. What I hope happens is I hope that the NFL officials become full-time employees. I hope that they're held accountable. I hope we know who these people are. I hope that they are scored and graded and asked questions and forced to answer, just like any other employee or coach or player or whatever. They should be available to the media. I mean, after a game, do they just run into their Ford Explorer and take off? I guess so. Why don't the refs sit there and answer questions? So why don't they do that in any sport? Why? I know the NBA gives their day after final 2-minute review, but who gives a shit? Like, how many times have you seen your team lose because of a shitty call in the final 2 minutes, and some nameless, faceless press release says, oh yeah, we screwed that call up. Okay, well, we still have a loss in the column. We're still 2 games back now. We're going to miss the playoffs because of this. My fantasy team lost because of this. I lost $1 million bet because of this. There's real repercussions now, and with real repercussions, there should be people held accountable. So thank you for watching this. Let me know in the comments below what you think. How can the NFL fix this officiating problem, this roughing the passer problem? Is this something you see in sports, as a whole? What sports are getting it right? What sports are getting it wrong? And hopefully you enjoyed this video as much as Aaron Rodgers. My goodness, look at that beautiful, beautiful smile.